Yo, what's up, guys? It's Derp Wigglies here. This time I'm coming to you with another Dark and Darker video. This one's a little off the cuff. It's about early access hotfix number 11 and some upcoming videos and some issues that Dark and Darker is kind of going through. I wanted to address some things. So the patch for hotfix number 11 came out, and we got a bunch of changes, specifically to Barbarian, Wizard, and Bard. Got nerfs and buffs and changes. Some things were just completely reworked. So yeah, let's get right into it. First things first, they addressed some things. What they fixed was, or what they fixed and changed. So they fixed an issue where the trade pop-up menu wasn't closing properly. Movement, they put a hard cap on movement speed at 350, which I think is a huge benefit to the entire game. I think that's a huge move because people going over 350 was causing a lot of issues, especially with the stacking of the buffs from Bard and Wizard. So haste plus Bard spells was capping, was like basically people were going above the movement cap and just zooming across the whole map. And it was enabling a lot of stuff like spawn rushing within like the first minute of the game. So this is going to help a lot of stuff like uncatchable rogues, uncatchable wizards. Like that stuff's not going to be as big of an issue with the movement cap at 350. In my opinion, that still might be a little too high, but we'll see how it plays out. So the quarterstaff now deals 100 damage no matter which part of the quarterstaff hits the opponent, which is also good. It's a huge buff to quarterstaff, which is going to change the barbarian. It's going to change the warlock. It's going to change the wizard. It's going to change the cleric. Anybody who could use a quarterstaff, that's going to change directly. It's going to make it a more viable weapon. I really like the attack pattern of the quarterstaff and the attack speed. I like where it's at. The only issue was that if you hit with anything other than the tip of this, like the very, very tip of the staff, it just didn't do like any damage. So even though it did pretty decent damage, if you hit at the end, the hitboxes were all wonky. So this fixes that issue. Axe specialization, this is a huge nerf to one particular meta, in my opinion, for the barbarian. The axe specialization changes, they changed it completely, where it used to just be a 5 additional physical damage. So that was basically just 5 extra damage per hit to 10% physical damage bonus. Now, that's going to change the axe the meta for Barb away from the Horseman's Axe meta, where they would just run in with one Horseman's Axe, because you were getting 5 additional damage per hit, and it was a high attack swing, and the pattern basically guaranteed headshots. So that mixed with some other things is going to change up the Barb meta a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more Barbarian shift to like double axe and stuff like basically the two-handed playstyle even more, which is going to both increase the outplay ability for against barbarians. So like people with rapier or spear or any kind of long-ranged weapon will have an easier time with barbarians versus, because they won't just be in your face with a horseman's getting guaranteed headshots, right? So it's also actually should increase the TTK, so it's going to take a little bit longer for barbarians to kill you, because they have to hit you with 2 to 3 shots versus like 5 from a horseman. But those 5 from the horsemen's were a lot quicker and guaranteed headshots, basically. So it's a big change to the way that barbarian's going to be played just by that one little change. Rogue double jump slow on landing duration reduced by a full second. That's actually huge, like a pretty decent buff for rogue. Wizard haste duration cut in half from 12 to 6 seconds. Wizard's invisibility decreased from 5 seconds to 3 seconds, almost in half again. So we're seeing a kind of a line in the sand being drawn. I think this debuff to Wizard was actually specifically aimed at barbarians, because the meta was becoming buff your barbarian and your fighter and let them run in, right? Haste and invis on your barb and your fighter, and just let them go wreck house, right? You just buff them to high heavens and they just go crazy. That haste and invis was a huge part of that when they were playing with a wizard. So that's going to be less effective now, which I think is really good. I think it's a little bit too heavy-handed unless they add some changes that I'm going to talk about at the end of the video. The movement speed reduced from 70% to 65% of base movement while casting with the spellbook. So you're actually going to be moving slower while casting with the spellbook, and the same thing is happening to a crystal ball. So you're going to be moving slower while casting with a crystal ball as well. That's another big nerf to wizards. That one's directly to wizards. It's also the spellbook is also a nerf to clerics and warlocks as well, because it's anybody with a crystal ball or anybody with a spellbook. So casting, being your movement speed while you're casting with either of those items is going to be significantly slower by 5%, but still. Achilles strike is completely reworked. The Achilles strike physical damage on hit was reduced from 10 damage to 0, so they completely got rid of the initial impact damage. And the damage taken per step has been decreased from 5 damage per step to 1 damage per step. So no longer is it like if you get hit with it, you're basically dead move. You'll take a little bit of damage, and now they've actually added, and I'm saying added a slow because it was really non-existent, the slow part of it. The Achilles strike slow debuff has been increased from negative 10% slow to a negative 30% movement speed, which is a huge buff for Achilles strike, in my opinion. I think that's more in line with how it should be. It's less of a kill mechanic now, as a way to it's an actually effective gap closer, because a 30% slow is pretty big, regardless of the situation. A 30% slow is huge. So now it's actually a gap closer rather than a cheesy 1 to 2 hit kill mechanic. I decided to level up a barbarian over the last few days, and I went from level 1 to 15 in 2 or 3 days. I went from 10 to 15 last night, and nothing but grays and greens, and nothing but rage and Achilles strike, and all I was doing was throwing lanterns at people and throwing torches at people and buying 2 sets of throwing axes. Right, I have $3,000 in my stash, and I've just been running a green horseman's and a green double axe the entire time, with whatever random gear I find in the dungeon. I stashed or sold all my blues and purples because you don't need them. With Achilles strike before this nerf, all you had to do was literally hit them with a torch and then rage and charge at them, and people would panic and run away and die. Half their life would be gone by the time you even got up to them. In the case of a hasted wizard, if you hit them with an Achilles strike, even with a torch before this nerf, if you threw a torch with Achilles strike at a wizard and they hasted and ran off, you could kill them with a torch with 1 hit if they were in base kit. I'm not even kidding. All they needed was they come with wizard shoes. So if they had any kind of other movement buff, like shoes or higher agility, they were literally dead. They would go from full health or almost full health to dead immediately, because it's 5 damage per step, and when you're hasted, you're taking so many steps. So yeah, this needed to happen. In my opinion, it's not enough. You shouldn't. It still lets you use Achilles strike with thrown weapons, but they need to make it so it doesn't proc off of lanterns and torches. It should only work with throwing axes, in my opinion. You shouldn't be able to throw a torch at somebody and they get hit with an ability. It doesn't make sense. Same thing for Blow of Corruption. I shouldn't be able to throw a torch at somebody and hit them with Blow of Corruption and they take 40 magic damage. I don't think that's intended gameplay. And then after that, Accelerondo's duration has been decreased from 12 seconds to 8 seconds, and movement speed boost decreased from 5, 7, and 9 to 3, 5, and 7 move speed, which is actually a really big debuff, or a really big nerf to Accelerando, which is drastic and needed, in my opinion. The drum movement speed penalty is increased from negative 20 to negative 30 movement speed, so this makes having better drums and having drums with movement speed buffs on them actually necessary. Right now, you don't need any better drums or lyres or flutes or anything. Those are all just cursory. If you have the money, you buy them. But this is going to make that a little bit more important. I think there should be some other nerfs to the starting gear bard instruments need to be nerfed. so that they impact the bard's movement speed more. So if they're not careful with their songs, they'll actually get outpaced by their team and left behind. Unless you have better gear, right? I think that should be, and movement speed is the best way to do that. So if you make it so they can't move very fast while they have their instruments out and they're playing their jams, then they're going to get outpaced by their team, or their team has to be more aware of where they are, making that movement speed buff less effective, right? So I think that's one way they could do it, and they've already started to do that with the 10 move speed penalty from drums, but that needs to be for all of the instruments, in my opinion. So for the next one is Francesca Axe's damage has been slightly reduced, which I don't really see was super necessary. I don't think it was a damage issue from the Francesca Axes. I think it was mostly Achilles strike, but we'll see. That might be a little too heavy-handed. I could see that getting reversed because they don't do a ton of damage right now. They can, like the blue ones and green ones do, but that's just a gear scaling issue. I have some hot takes on that as well that I'm testing right now, and that's going to be a huge video coming soon. The next one is Bard's Song of Silence now targets all nearby targets, including yourself. So if you're silenced, like the Bard Song of Silence means that you can't play another song until that song is over. The effect radius of Bard's Unchained Harmony has been changed from 600 to 300. So they cut the effective radius of Unchained Harmony in half. Bard's Tranquility now heals 1 recoverable hit points over 10, 20, and 30 seconds. So it's gonna, every second, you're going to get 1 hit point over 10, 20, or 30 seconds. But here's which is already a nerf. But here's where it gets to be pretty heavy-handed nerfs with the Bard. I actually really love these nerfs for the Bard. I personally love playing the Bard, but I stopped playing it because of how broken it is. And that's just out of the box. No gear, no nothing. You could take a stock level 1 Bard and be OP as hell in team fights. Just by existing and knowing how to play your spells correctly. So, and this is where it gets crazy. So, Tranquility now only heals 1 recoverable hit points per second over 10, 20, or 30 seconds. Bard's Tranquility effect now only applies while resting. So if you want to get your heals from Tranquility, you have to rest. So it's basically just an improved rest mechanic. And then Bard's Quarrel of Clarity effect now only applies while resting as well. So you have to sit to get the resting, which essentially fixes the issue of people getting health and recovery from Tranquility and Quarrel of Clarity in mid-combat. There should be no reason why the wizard spells and the bards, like the wizard spells, the cleric spells, all these spells should be coming back as they use them mid-combat. It just makes the bard OP. And there's no reason why all this recoverable health should be coming back at like 3 health per second mid-combat. It makes their healing better than the cleric, and it makes it completely reduces the need for clarity potions. So clarity pots are going to be way more effective now. They're going to be almost required at the higher levels of gameplay. They already kind of were, but this is going to make it even more so because bards can only regen those spells on rest. The animation, another nerf to the barbarian. The animation of the Horseman's Axe, the Hatchet, and Viking Sword have been slightly changed. I think they improved the Viking Sword a little bit, but the Hatchet and Horseman's have been kind of tweaked to where it's not as guaranteed of headshots. So I think the Horseman's meta for Bard or for Barbarian is going to fall off a bit, and I think we're going to see a lot more. Double axes and bardishes and stuff like that. I think we're going to see more of the two-hander stuff. Yeah. So let's move on to the developer comments. They say this is straight from SDF. So we are currently looking into ways of slowing down the high tempo of the high-end game since it was much faster than we originally envisioned. Although we have some large changes in the works that specifically target the tempo of the game for the next week, we believe that we needed to address the current speed death ball meta in an urgent manner with some hot fixes. We also plan to have a more extensive rework of the bard class while starting to flesh out the warlock in the future update, along with continual balance changes to better align with the skill versus gear balance we seek. So this is where I'm going to get into my hot takes a little bit, and I'm going to back this up with an entire video of testing that I'm doing. I'm spending about 3,000 gold just on items to test, maybe more. I'm gonna delete a lot of my characters to do some testing. Like I'm spending a lot of time and in-game money on this, so be ready for that video. But my preliminary findings are that the issue with most classes isn't the actual class perks and abilities themselves. It's how they interact with gear, and specifically gear above white level, uncommon. So once you get to green to blue to purple, and you start adding in those affixes, the modifiers, and you start like exponentially increasing the damage output, there is a lot of stuff that starts breaking down. There's too much damage scaling after the uncommon level, just straight damage scaling from weapons, and there's too much armor scaling after the uncommon level. In my opinion, I think the game in its current state would highly benefit from having damage and armor capped at the uncommon level, and then having the only thing after that that changes be the affixes and the line items. So I'm going to explain this better in more detail in a longer video, but yeah, they need to change weapons and armor. They need to change weapons and armor, very badly. And I think that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is coming from damage scaling being wonky after like green, blue, purple, and legendary, and armor scaling being wonky after green, blue, purple, and legendary. Like after uncommon, everything starts to break down, especially once you start adding modifiers in. And the modifiers are having a huge issue with overlapping, and that's because we have flat modifiers, and then we have a flat +4 damage, right, or +3 damage modifier, and then you also have a percentage modifier, and then you have like a percentage of a percentage modifier. And all of the ways that these interplay with each other makes some combinations and some items some very specific perk combinations exceedingly broken. And it allows you to go from like 60 damage to 200 plus damage with just a handful of items. So unless that's intended, that needs to be changed. And I think they have started to realize this with stuff like the movement speed cap, like putting a hard cap on movement speed, putting a hard cap on PDR. I think that they're starting to realize this a little bit, but I think they're doing it in a weird way. Capping the statistics themselves versus capping or reworking the way that their items function. I think they need to remove like the percentage modifiers entirely. In my opinion, I don't think we need like a +4%, like a 1.4% health modifier. Just give us a +4 modifier for health. Give us a plus, if you want to increase our health by 10, just give us a +10 health increase, right? We don't need a 1.8% health increase, because the way that works is if you're a barbarian, that percentage increase is going to be a lot bigger than it is if you're a rogue, right? So those percentages are going to be far more beneficial. And if you cap like a +4 health item, or if you put a +4 health item plus percentage items, the way that it interplays makes those percentage health items at the end of the health calculation give you a way larger bonus than the flat bonus items. It just doesn't make sense. The math doesn't add up, and it's all too convoluted, and it leads to math breaking down in a lot of places, and it leads to a lot of really, 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 like, the people who have money can get so stacked that they're essentially unkillable by anybody who's not exactly similarly geared, because there are certain perk combinations that basically make you do your TTK is 16 times higher than it would be in stock or even green weapons and armor. So, or white weapons and armor. Like people don't need a 30 times effective health pool. Um, and I think some of these changes are starting to address that. I just think that they're kind of doing it in a wonky way. I love Iron Mace. I love the speed at which they're doing all this stuff. I just think that, and to be blunt, they need to stop listening to people like me. They need to stop listening to YouTubers. They need to stop listening to streamers. They need to just like look at the math and see where this stuff is starting to break down, and look at good examples of gameplay and game design that have already happened. They are designing this game after Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons only adds like +1 to their items. +2, +3 is like the max you'll see for damage. And the reason for that is because at the higher levels, if you add more than that, in conjunction with the way that their armor system works, and they don't add percentages to anything, and they just use flat number based, like, integer based increases, just 1, 2, 3, right? That's all. Increase your movement speed by 1, 2, or 3, not 20%. Because if you start adding in these percentiles and percentages, the math starts really breaking down. So I think they need to go back towards like looking at Dungeons and Dragons, which has, at this point, 40, 50 years of design behind it, and kind of go back to simplifying stuff. It may not be as flashy, or the loot might not seem as cool, but the game will be a lot more balanced and a lot more enjoyable to play. And if you cap things out for like damage and armor at white, that means that like at uncommon, that means that people in uncommon gear can still kind of keep up with people in green and blue, and then the people in green and blue can keep up with the people in purple and legendary if their skill is somewhat even, right? Right now the gap is just too big, but I have a whole video planned on that. I hope you guys liked this video. Thank you for all of my subscribers. I am going to put the subscribers in the end roll right now, so kind of like as a credits. Thank you guys so much. I know I haven't been making as many videos. I've been streaming a lot more. I've been on the Discord like all the time. We've also had some family emergencies, and some other stuff has kind of come up. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Please go check out the Patreon and the YouTube membership. They're both basically the same thing. So then they get pretty much the same content. So either one, if you want to join one of those, you're going to get more extra content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Thank you guys all so much. Huge thank you to everybody seen in the end credits. I love you guys. You guys have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys in the dungeon. Peace.